Oh boy. So I spent a few hours this morning researching what to talk about today. And there are so many things to talk about, but I feel like what we're going to cover today will allow us to have the best quality conversation without the comment section descending into chaos. So look, let me just let me just show you what we're going to talk about. Banks poised to escape tax rises in Rachel Reeves' budget. As you know, the budget is in 14 days' time. And we've covered on the channel before the fact that there was this idea floated that if there was a tax imposed on the banks, that it could potentially raise £8 billion. And looking at the comment section of that video, a lot of people were in favor of it. However, there are downsides to doing this to the banks. And this is what I wanted to kind of talk about in this video. But before we dive in, if you do get value from this, or you pick up something, or you would just enjoy the conversation, please consider subscribing. We're trying to get to 80,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Hit that notification bell. You'll be notified when I upload another video like this. And if you don't mind, please also tap the like button to signal to the YouTube algorithm that you actually enjoyed the video as well. Let's get into the article and just read through the rationale behind this, okay? And then we'll have a discussion around the banks, and I've got a call to action for you at the end of this video, all right? So here we are. It says here, the Chancellor has decided against increasing taxes on banks in this month's budget, according to reports, which sent UK bank shares higher on Thursday. Now, this was published last week. Shares in the high street banks NatWest and Lloyds rose by 2%, putting them among the top risers on the London FTSE 100. Now, it says here, despite speculation in the run-up to the November 26 budget, Rachel Reeves has reportedly told colleagues that she does not intend to impose further taxes on the UK banking sector, as she wants to remain competitive to help support economic growth, according to the Financial Times. Now, if you recall, like last week, we listened to her a press conference early in the morning, 8 a.m. And I kind of mentioned that that was maybe the first time, at least that I felt, that she was trying to position the difficult choices and provide some rationale behind it. And she did in that speech say that she wanted the budget to be a growth budget where it would be hopefully business friendly. Now, whether people would generally, you tell me, whether you would class, although the banks are businesses, whether not imposing a further tax on the banks is necessarily business friendly. Now, there's a reason why she's done this for the banks, and we'll come to that in a moment. But that's the rationale. She wants to make it competitive, particularly when you start considering losing talent, that kind of stuff, to other financial hubs in the world. Banks currently pay corporation tax rate of 28%, which includes a 3% surcharge on top of the standard corporation rate of 25%. So they're paying over the standard corporation tax rate, which is going to add to how much they contribute to the government in terms of tax and the economy, that kind of thing. Now, fresh calls for a new tax rate on lenders was raised in August in a paper by the Institute for Public Policy Research think tank, which calculated such a move would raise £8 billion. And again, if you've not seen the video where I broke that down, this is the thumbnail that you need to look for. Go and watch our video. It's very, very fascinating how the banks have earned money through money being printed through the financial crisis and through COVID, just by having licenses to facilitate transactions. It's very, very interesting. What it goes on to say here is that ministers have previously asked Treasury officials to look into the profitability of UK's largest banks as a consequence of quantitative easing. This is what I was referring to earlier. The Guardian understands speculation about a windfall tax on the large banks, Ministers had previously asked Treasury officials to look into the profitability of the UK's largest banks as a consequence of quantitative easing, which is what I was referring to earlier. Speculation about a windfall tax on large banks spooked investors, triggering a sharp sell-off of banking shares and prompting industry to lobby against high taxes for the sector. Now, the fact that the banks are able to, I mean, look, it's common in America, but the fact that you then have the the sector lobbying the government to state their claim as to why they shouldn't be subject to higher taxes is indeed a freedom that we enjoy. And it says here the banking industry body UK Finance claimed in a report in October that the total tax paid by UK banks was higher than that of other financial centres, including New York, Dublin, Frankfurt, and Amsterdam, driven by changes to employers' national insurance contributions from this April. The total tax contribution of UK banking sector for the most recent financial year was £43.3 billion, representing 4.3% of total UK government tax receipts, according to an estimate by PwC. It found that the overall contribution has risen by a third since PwC study began in 2014, when it was £33.4 billion. Now, when you look at those numbers, obviously those are quite large numbers, right? And when you think about the contribution of the banks, and this is where the conversation can descend into two trains of thoughts. Yes, the banks were bailed out in 2007, 2008. They actually made a load of money through the quantitative easing through that period and all the way through COVID up until now. So they were bailed out with taxpayers' money. So in a situation where the country faces a black hole of £40 billion, I think is what's being bandied around at the moment, is it wrong to ask the banks to pay a little bit more to help fill that hole? I don't think it is. And I work in financial services, but I think, and I don't know that this is what the Chancellor is thinking, but thinking about this from just an economic point of view and from a global point of view, I can see how raising taxes on the banks and their current rate of tax contribution being higher than the likes of New York, Dublin, Frankfurt, Amsterdam, as being mentioned in the article, it does mean that perhaps the UK doesn't become as attractive for startups in banking or in finance, so on and so forth. And certainly for the established boys who are employing people, it doesn't make it that attractive. And I think that's a fine balance to strike as a chancellor. But I think the bigger conversation I want to have here is when you look at the banking sector, you often hear this phrase, too big to fail. And I don't think that people necessarily understand what that phrase means. Because when you look at the banking sector and everything that they are responsible for in terms of how they interface with the world that we know, their influence runs deep. Let me just show you this. I've tried to come up with a way of articulating this in the scribe, okay? So hopefully you can see this, all right? So if you have a look at this as being the banking sector in the UK and you think about what they're all responsible for, okay, let's just go through these one by one. Let's start with employment. So when you think about all of the banks, and not just the top six, there's about 200 or 300 banks or so, between 200 and 300 banks in the UK right now, small and big. Across all of the banks, they employ 380,000 staff in the UK. Okay? Now, just on that point alone, everything's interconnected. Because when you start thinking about the employees in the bank, not only are these guys now obviously paying corporation tax on their profits, but they're also paying national insurance on the wages of their 380,000 staff. But when you go one step below that, you think about the staff. The staff are paying income tax. The staff are paying national insurance contributions, right? There's a knock-on effect. That's just in the employment side. When you go on to things like tax contributions, we've already mentioned in the article, £43.3 billion a year being paid in corporation tax. It's a huge contribution. It's only 4.3%, but the number is pretty large. Many will argue, well, surely they can pop that up to 6%. Yeah, maybe it is possible, but that competitive side is obviously a huge point of contention that the Chancellor has to kind of balance. Then you start thinking about, okay, what other things are the banks connected to? Household savings. Just think about the deposits that people hold. Vast sums of money being held in these banks, particularly the top six. You start thinking about government finance and how they facilitate all of that. You start thinking about pension funds and how many pension funds are invested in bank shares. You already heard in this article, Lloyd's TSB, and I think it was NatWest, there was mentioned that their share price rose by 2%. How many people, literally people, have benefited from that 2% share rise? People in retirement, people drawing incomes, people investing for the future. These pension funds have vast sums of money in the banking sector in the UK. Then you start getting down to the everyday things: mortgages, loans, credit cards. You start thinking about business financing. So, not just huge multi corporations, I'm talking about small business owners, small to medium sized enterprises. The banking sector is so deeply enrooted in our economy and our system as a whole. Let's not forget payments. If you think about how much money moves around the system every single day, all facilitated through the banks, this is what they mean when they say too big to fail. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses here for Rachel Reeves, but I do think that the decision not to tax them, if this actually is something that doesn't happen in the budget, whilst will be met with rage for reasons that I've mentioned earlier on, you can kind of see the point to it as well. And this is where I just really want to kind of like bring this back, because when I look at the comment section, there is quite rightly a lot of anger around what is likely going to happen on November 26th. I'm still hoping that with all these rumors flying around, that on the day, it won't be as bad as we anticipate it will. And, this is the genius of having news leaks and speculation in the news, because ultimately they build it up. And if it's not as bad as what you were all expecting, it's a great tactic to soften you up, to allow you to come to terms with the changes that are made, despite the fact that, yes, it's going to have an impact on your livelihood, potentially, on your lifestyle, your standard of living, your finances. It's a very, very clever tactic. But I do want to bring this back to the things that we can control, because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, and I've said this over the past 5 years on the channel, it is not the government's job to ensure that every individual to a man has a decent retirement fund or has a decent amount of savings in their bank account. Not to the man. Overall, they're supposed to provide us an environment that is conducive, that allows us to have a good standard of living. It's supposed to service the broad needs of society. But they cannot control what you decide to do, what financial decisions you decide to make. And so the onus really is on us at the end of the day. You can't control what Rachel Reeves is going to do. Today, they're talking about a battle for the Labour leadership. I mean, what's going to happen? Keir goes, Rachel goes, someone else steps in. What do you think is going to happen? Is anything going to change? The Lib Dems win. Reform win. Do you think overnight it's just going to change? Like the challenges will disappear? That we're going to be dealt a different set of cards? I mean, ideas are great. Where ideas fail is in the execution. And what we're seeing at this point in time is, well, maybe we need fresh ideas, which is why I understand why people feel aggrieved and say that Labour and Tories are dead and we need to go a different route. You vote how you want to. But I want to bring this back to the fact that you have to control your own controllables and make your own decisions around your finances, because no one's going to come and save you when you come to retirement. You got nothing in your pension pot. No one's going to save you when you have zero in an emergency fund and you can't get accepted for a credit card and all of a sudden you're in a really, really tight spot. You have to take care of that part because it's your responsibility. And look, last week I made a video about the 3 things everyone should be doing in the run-up and after the budget. It's this video right here. So just go watch that, because the people who are going to thrive, who are going to survive, are the people with financial resilience. And for the past 5 years, I've been on this mantra of trying to help people understand how to make better financial decisions. It's what's changed my financial landscape for the better. And I know that it can help you as well. So please go watch that video next. It's not rocket science. A lot of it is common sense. But hopefully, by watching it, maybe a light bulb will go on, you'll find it useful. And I have to say thank you to everyone who has watched that video, by the way. I've made videos, plenty of videos like that over the past 5 years, and they have got nowhere near the amount of views. 2,000 views, 3,000 views, if that. I think that video at the moment is approaching 40,000 views. So clearly, it resonates with people, and people are finding it useful reading through the comment section. I'd love to know what you think in the comment section down below. Give me a shout. I'll catch you later on. Cheers.